we heard President Biden say no taxes. Well, we're getting taxed to death. Look at inflation. And if anybody believes that inflation is 3%, they should go see a doctor, because there's no way it's 3%. Just go to the grocery store. The average family is spending about $700 a month more this year than they were last year. If the prices are higher, are you not paying more taxes through that as well? I mean, it's a percentage basis. So if gas should be $2 now, it's $3, you're paying an extra 30 cents a gallon just for the federal tax. So we can talk nonsense all we want about either whether you think he does a good job or a bad job. I think this has been probably the worst administration in history, okay, because of the damage that they've done to people and to the economy.
Think. Act. And prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey, Bubba, good to have you back on the channel.
It is great to be here with you. Always a pleasure, man.
Man, I just called you unapologetic Bubba.
Well, what's there to apologize for? Telling the truth?
Yeah.
When you tell the facts, you don't have to apologize, unlike what we see going on in this country right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. What was your take on this whole mugshot thing with President Trump? I mean, that's the first time. Was that the first time we've ever seen that happen? That didn't even happen with Nixon, did it?
No. I think it's a crock. You know, if you ever saw the movie It's a Wonderful Life, every time a bell rings, angel gets his wings. Every time they get close to getting Biden, Trump gets indicted. So it's just kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it sounds like a mess, man. It sounds like a mess. So how does one find optimism in these times? I mean, times like this.
Well, I don't think there is a lot of reason for optimism. I think we have to go to hope. But the biggest problem in the country, in my opinion, Daryl, is that people don't care until it affects them directly. And a lot of people aren't being directly affected yet, so they don't think about anybody else. But I always go back to, there's a poem written by Martin Niemöller, 100 years ago, which was, first they came for the trade unionists, and I wasn't a trade unionist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the Protestants, I did nothing. They came for the Catholics, I did nothing. They came for the Jews, I did nothing. And then they came for me, and there was nobody left to help. And I think that's the attitude of this country. Nobody cares, because if you're really watching what's going on between giving up our oil supply, between giving everybody else power but ourselves, America may be the greatest country in the world, but we're not supposed to be going backwards to catch everybody else. We're supposed to be looking forward and making them catch up to us.
Yeah. So we're supposed to be a few moves ahead and playing the game of chess, not checkers, right?
Well, that's what we're playing now, is checkers, and it's very sad, because the United States is one country that could be totally self-sufficient. We don't really need anybody else if we chose to. We're only missing some of the rare earth materials, but we could do without those. And I'm not saying we should do that. I'm just saying that we are the one country that doesn't need any other country to help us.
Why are we importing like a lot of this stuff anyway? I mean, that sounds ludicrous to me. Like, we're importing a lot of the materials that we can get from here.
Well, I think it's, again, it's about money. It's about cheaper. They say it's cheaper. It's about the lobbyists. Daryl, we have a political system, and I'm not going to pick on either party because they're both bad. But the bottom line is that the system's broken down. There's too much money involved for the lobbyists and the politicians on both sides of the aisle by doing all these things that do not necessarily benefit the United States of America, the citizens here. And certainly we have big issues with, we heard President Biden say no taxes. Well, we're getting taxed to death. Look at inflation. And if anybody believes that inflation is 3%, they should go see a doctor, because there's no way it's 3%. Just go to the grocery store. The average family is spending about $700 a month more this year than they were last year.
Yeah. People were feeling it for sure. And then we have the high interest rates too. We had credit card debt hit $1 trillion. I think the average rate is 20-something%. So people are definitely feeling the pain.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah,
Just on a credit card. I'm not so concerned about the number, because obviously inflation, $1 trillion deficits but I do think it's important to understand that there are more people that are maxed out on their credit cards than ever before in history. And the big problem there is that when you get to that point, you're paying what they call usury rates. You're paying 26%. Okay. And you can't bankrupt on your credit cards because the lobbyists were too strong years ago. That halted any bankrupt to a credit card. So we're digging a deep hole of debt. And yet here we are. And of course, we're going to somebody's got to pay all that debt.
Yeah. The debt ceiling has been, is it suspended indefinitely right now, or?
They should suspend the politicians indefinitely because for letting this thing get on here. I mean, why is it that in Washington, D.C., they don't have to live like you and I have to live on a budget? If you and I lived like they did, we'd be either in bankruptcy court or jail. Yeah,
definitely living like kings and princes and everything, right? So right now we're at this weird point in the market. The Fed came out of Jackson Hole and said that they may be raising rates even further. Some people are anticipating that the Fed's going to cut rates soon or something. Like, what's your take on the Fed?
We're going higher. We're going much higher. This is only, again, first of all, when you have, if you believe that we're in a recession right now, which I do, okay, but let's say you don't. But if you're in a recession, you don't hike rates into a recession anyways. Number one. Number two, the Fed is really doing the banks a favor because the higher the interest rates, the higher the carry rate, the more money that they make. So they're doing everything to help everybody else except for middle America with that ridiculous garbage of theirs saying that they're trying to get to their 2% inflation target. But in the meantime, what are the people doing that are on Social Security or fixed income? They're not keeping up anywhere near what the inflation is. And I believe that the 10-year notes, which is the key benchmark today, gets to 6%.
Yeah, that would be the markets will go through a lot of pain when it hits that point, right?
Well, you would think so, but so far, even at rates now with the Fed funding rates, they just are under 6%. The markets are holding up pretty well, which is an astonishing fact as it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so so they're talking about raising rates even higher. Obviously, if they keep it higher for longer and people have to refinance, businesses have to refinance loans and such. Mortgage rates are it may be at 8% at some point. Or
I think they'll be at 10 before it's all said and done.
Yeah. So it sounds like the average person is in for some pain.
Oh, I think we're in for a lot of pain. I don't understand why we're seeing what we're seeing here now. And I think that the average person is in for a lot of pain here because you're really destructing the middle class. It's almost like you watch, the AOCs of the world and the Squad that are really trying to destroy the middle class, trying to go over this great reset that they want. And of course, we don't want that. We want to be able to, Americans, the beautiful thing about being an American is you have a chance for capitalism. And if you are smarter than somebody else, you're better than somebody else, you can build a heck of a life here. And they're trying to take all that away. And that you can watch that by the way they put regulations out. There's nobody who's ever going to be able to compete with Google, Meta, or Twitter, or X, as you want to call it now, because all the regulations are against the little guy trying to compete. Small banks can't compete with the big banks because of their cost. So you can see that the destruction has begun. The real question is, are the American people going to step up and say, enough of this already?
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like what you're saying is government is too big, it's expanding, and it's obviously dipping its hands in a lot of things that it shouldn't be dipping its hands into.
100%. Listen, Daryl, if you go back to the Constitution clearly states government is run city, county, state, and the federal government is an overseer, and it was never intended to be the largest employer in the world.
Yeah, that's true. So we got inflation. I don't know if the inflation numbers came out today. I don't know if it's tomorrow. So obviously the 3%, it's a joke. Energy is steady going up. Gas prices are going up, and such. And so, how does this when does this turn around? In terms of do you see inflation just continuously going up? What's your take on inflation in the longer term?
Well, I think this will go directly to this administration. Okay. They don't want to turn it around. They like the direction that we're headed because they are strapping and putting a lot of pressure on the middle class. Again, I don't like either party, but I will put the inflation problem squarely on the Biden administration, because everything they are doing is costing Americans more money. And we're not only being taxed for the hidden tax of inflation, but we're being taxed more. Again, nobody talks about gasoline, right? Every state has a state and a federal tax on their gasoline. If the prices are higher, are you not paying more taxes through that as well? I mean, it's a percentage basis. So if gas should be $2 now, it's $3. You're paying an extra 30 cents a gallon just for the federal tax. So we can talk nonsense all we want about either whether you think he does a good job or a bad job. I think this has been probably the worst administration in history, okay, because of the damage that they've done to people and to the economy, because this economy is horrible. And again, once again, we're going back into this, the election variant of COVID, okay, because we're already talking about putting masks back on people on airplanes in 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've been seeing something about that, and thanks for breaking that news to me. I've been seeing something about it, but that's wow. So with these, obviously we have these political risks and everything. The market seems to be in like no man's land. Do you see any major moves? Are you bearish right now? Bullish? What's your
I'm
take?
pretty bearish. However, and the full disclosure, my positions are kind of split, and I always care. I'm always an investor long term in America. Okay, I'm hedged against my long term investment, but I'm always basically net long the markets. I am pretty bearish here, but again, being bearish has not been really fruitful, because look what's going on here. We had a little bit of a sell off last week, and this week, bang, we're back up, pushing towards recent highs. Look, I can't tell the market what to do. I think that we're in for a real beatdown, because you've got the emergency lending rate, which the banks borrow from the Federal Reserve, is at record highs right now, which is telling you that the banks are over leveraged once again. And I don't know what's going to be the domino that finally pulls the rug from everybody. But, it won't be this week. It could be next week into September. It could be into October. It might not be till next year. That's the one issue that we can't control, is the lack of volume and the amount of money flowing in to the markets. And remember one thing, money will always flow to where it's treated best. And right now, the best place is the market, whether I like it or not.
Yeah. So who becomes the black sheep or the scapegoat if the markets do take a big hit next year in the election year?
Well, I think that the blame will go squarely on the administration. I mean, that's typically, whether that be correct or not, because it is not really a correct statement. They can do whatever they want, but people can invest, and they will blame this administration, which again makes you wonder: will the Fed, or will somebody, will the hidden hands continue to hold this market out? They called it the Fed put for years, keeping a bottom on the market. Will that continue? I don't really know. You cannot predict what the markets are going to do. You can look at the overall action, and the actions right now is pretty split. I mean, the Nasdaq and the S&P are in uptrends. The Dow and the Russell are flat to in downtrends. And oil's continue to be in an uptrend, which is not going to be good overall. It's going to create more inflation. The real problem I have here, Daryl, is the food issue. Okay, because farmers are getting punished with low prices. And it is my opinion, and only my opinion only, that China is selling grains and keeping their thumb on the scale, because they're trying to accumulate more farmland. They already own the largest hog producer or pork producer in the world in Smithfield Foods, which is an American company owned by China. They already own a ton of farmland, and I think they want to accumulate as much as they can, because they want to not only control the world, they want to control the food supply to bring everybody. That's their 100-year plan. And Joe Biden is opening up the door for him and saying, well, come on in, take whatever you want. We'll give you anything. Just keep paying me off.
Do you think this power gets shared with other BRICS nations, or
I don't think so. I think China is in it for themselves, and they're big enough to be in it for themselves. I think that the BRICS currency idea, and again, we can talk about the BRICS, the backing of gold, which I happen to agree with, that I think that our currency should be backed by something other than the full faith and credit of the United States government. Because if you look at your bills, 50 years ago or 80 years ago, you look at it would say silver certificate. Now you look at it says note, which means it's a debt. And that's how we get our money, is by creating more debt. I like the idea of something backing it. In fact, Texas and Missouri have tried to vote to get silver and gold more as currencies once again. But I think the BRICS has the right idea, but they don't have enough power to make it happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Yeah, they definitely. I mean, even in the last meeting, they said that they would address the currency issue like next year, and a lot of people were anticipating this year they were going to announce something and such, and so it was a lot of fear mongering around that. And what
all you do is look at the dollar and look at gold. Gold is mediocre to flat over this whole announcement. You would think gold would be higher, and the dollar's at highs. So, again, if there was a problem, they would say that those markets would not be as strong or strong and weak as they are.
Mm-hmm. So, what commodities are you bullish on, short, midterm, long term?
Well, I'm always bullish on gold and silver a little bit. Again, I'm always, now this is a very important point for everybody to understand. As an investor, I will buy physical metals, okay, because I'm going to store them. I'm not selling them. Never buy physical metals that you can't afford to hold, because if you ever have to sell them, you're not going to like the price you're going to get when you have to sell them. In the paper market, the futures and other markets, I will trade either long or short. And right now, I'm long silver paper, I'm long silver gold, I'm long gold paper, and of course, I'm always got physical metals. I just bought some more physical metals when the prices had dipped a couple of weeks ago. So I'll continue to accumulate, but right now I will be long those, and I think they're pretty good. I've been really bullish the grain markets, but it's hard to be bullish when they keep pounding on you and you continue to watch them go lower. I mean, you saw wheat drop last year, a year ago, wheat was at about $13. It's under $6 right now, which is, a 50% drop, which is ridiculous. And it doesn't make sense, because when we look at what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and the lack of production out of the Black Sea, I don't know. I guess we're going to have Marie Antoinette come out and say, let them eat cake, because I don't know how we're going to continue to produce wheat at these costs.
Yeah, and I think recently Russia pulled out of the grain deal or something like that, because they were allowing grains to be transported across the Black Sea. Is that correct?
Yes, but we've already got problems in the Middle East. Because they don't produce enough wheat there in the desert. So there's been some food riots there already. Again, the whole system doesn't make logical sense right now, and I think it's a problem. But again, when you look at the markets, they're going up. I mean, I think that you look at oil's probably going back over $100 a barrel. That would be a bullish commodity I'd be looking at. I think cotton looks pretty good. Again, I think when it's all said and done, I think the commodities are going to go into a big market, and I think we're just seeing some pressure on them right now. But I do think they're going to end up going pretty high.
What's your take on uranium?
I like uranium. The problem is that there's no great vehicle to really trade it with. Okay, it's not like there's a futures contract that you can trade, and a lot of the ETFs that represent it, they're okay. But you don't get. If I trade something like that, I want to get the natural true bang for the buck, right? Like I trade real gold, in the markets, I'm getting a true bid offer spread. You don't have that same benefit in uranium. But I think, look, I own some uranium stocks like Cameco and some others, but I don't, I don't trade it because it's really not tradable, because there's nothing liquid enough that we can actually trade and try to be active in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gotcha. So, what would you give, like, what advice would you give, like, the average person during these times? I mean, you've been in the markets for a while, obviously.
Only 44 years.
Yeah, and we're trying to figure it out. And I know you have a trading service where you coach people and you do some Zooms and stuff. So what would you advise, like, for average people? Should we just be stacking cash? Like, are we? Do you see some major risk ahead?
I think there's a risk, but here's the thing: what I would be doing if I was not a trader, just an investor, I would be buying good, solid companies that I felt were going to be around years from now. Okay, and I would buy bits and pieces of stuff that I'm not going to have to sell under an emergency. Remember, there's a big difference between truly investing and over leveraging yourself with too much risk. I do believe in the country. I do believe in the United States of America. I do believe that markets will continue to go up 8.5% year over year, which they have done in history. However, again, what happens with too many people is they get too over leveraged to start with, and then suddenly they need the money and they have to sell it at a loss. You can only invest what you're not going to need tomorrow, which means you got to pay all your bills first, and what's left over, put in them instead of having Starbucks every day or a couple of beers every day, cut down to Starbucks every other day and only one beer. And then you can have a little extra money to put in the market and let it work for you, because the next 20 years will be worth a lot more than it is today.
Yeah. Thank you for those practical tips. I appreciate you for coming on, Bubba. Enjoyed the time. Enjoyed you being unapologetic, and yes, it's always good.
Daryl, it's my pleasure, man. You're a great host. I appreciate it. And anytime, I'm always here for you, brother.
All right, thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.